All right, Mr. Silverman.
Hello,
The juniors
hello.
are here. They are
Yay.
ready.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. Can you hear me okay? Can you see me okay? All right. I'm going to proceed. Watch out for my post-it notes. I'm going to proceed as if you can hear me and see me okay. If that changes, you let me know, all right? And Katie, I've made you co-host of this Zoom.
Awesome.
All right. All right,
Perfect.
let's kick it into gear here. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight for you spotlight for you. This sheet that says ACT versus SAT, and I think everybody's got one of these, okay? And it looks like so.
We're good.
So this first part here, this is like a fact sheet. And it's a way that we can compare both SAT and ACT. I guess before we go any farther, let me introduce myself. I'm Josh Silverman, and I have a test prep and tutoring business called Edge Ed. I've been working with the wonderful folks at Marshall High School for years now, and have worked with many students at Marshall High School. It's always a pleasure, and it's always a pleasure to be here for Junior Focus Day. I'm here to tell you what I know about the SAT, the ACT, and I would be delighted to answer any questions that you have. But let's start off with what I've got for you. Take a look at this sheet for me. Quick comparison, ACT versus SAT. You can see I broke it down for you. Now, first of all, both tests are available throughout the year, okay? And you can take the tests anytime you want, and you can take the tests as many times as you want. You could take the test as a freshman. You could take the test in the spring. You could take the test in the fall. You could take the test in the summer. You could take the test in the winter. I, Josh Silverman, could take the test. I could sign up for any of those SATs and take them. I could sign up for any of those ACTs and take them anytime I want. Anybody can take these tests, and you can take them as many times as you want. And there's no penalty for taking them extra times. Take them as many times as you want. No, I don't recommend that you make yourself into a professional test taker. That's my job. Your job is to get a score that you're going to be happy with submitting. And I want to be clear, there's never been a better time to submit applications without a test score. Never in history has it been easier to get into college with no SAT, with no ACT. If you are not a strong tester, if this ain't your bag, that's okay. Everybody's test optional these days. Now, I say the word test optional. Does everybody know what that means? Test optional. Test optional is not, that's called a rhetorical question. Test optional is not the same as test blind. Test blind means your scores on the SAT or the ACT are absolutely not considered at all for your application, nor for your scholarships. Maybe for placement, but that would be it. The entire University of California system is now test blind. They lost a lawsuit. They do not consider SAT or ACT scores in any way, shape, or form. Now, a little while back, it looked like that was the future. It looked like every school was heading in that direction. Well, we're starting to see already that it's kind of starting to swing back in the other direction. I believe MIT is one of the first schools to go from test optional to back to requiring the test. And their rationale is, well, we learned stuff from them taking the test. They're useful. But test optional means you could submit your score, you could not submit your score. It's totally up to you. Okay. So what do I do for a living. I teach the SAT, I teach the ACT, and I help my students become successful. So over the last couple of years, as we've moved towards test optional, what has happened? By far the biggest change is everyone wants massive score increases. It's not enough to say I went up 100 points on the SAT. Everyone's like, I need a 250-point increase. It's not enough to say I went from a 21 to a 26 on the ACT. Everyone wants to go from a 21 to a 31 on the ACT, a 10-point increase. These are totally unrealistic. It is exceedingly rare that you would ever find someone who increases their SAT score by 250 points. It's exceedingly rare that you would ever find someone who increases their ACT score by 10 points. Statistically speaking, that's nearly impossible. No, it happens. It does happen. That's why people come to me, because sometimes these score increases happen. You can't count on it, though. That's something like a miracle. Miracles happen. Miracles happen every test cycle for me. But that's not something you can count on. So what it means is this, is that the goal, the expectations for these scores are super, super high. And not everyone's going to meet them. If you don't, that's fine. You're going to submit your score, your application without a score. But what that means is everyone who is submitting a score has what? Yeah, a really good score. A really good score. If you're going to submit, it's going to be as a good score. It's called self-selection bias. Everybody knows if their score's not good enough, don't bother submitting. You can still get in. So if you are going to submit, it's going to be a really high score. Talk to me, please.
So here's the question. You're saying students want to have they want the highest score they can get.
Correct.
Are colleges expecting only those kinds of wow scores? Or if a student has a score that maybe is in the middle range of 1,100 to 1,200, should they be submitting that?
That is your job, not mine, because that is going to be a case-by-case basis. Each student and each school. Now you're really getting into the nitty-gritty. Now you're really getting into the nitty-gritty. How do you know whether your score is good enough to submit or not? Does it make sense? That's absolutely a case-by-case basis. You'll work hand in glove with your counselor. This is a good counseling program. Everyone in this room that can hear my voice, you guys are lucky. I've seen a lot of different counseling programs. Marshall, this is one of the best I've ever seen. Certainly at a public high school. So work with your instructors, work with your counselors, talk to the school, ask them, should I submit? Everything that we're doing right now is all new. We are living in a completely new universe. The entire world of admissions, applications, everything is different than it was pre-pandemic.
We have another question. Can we ask another question?
Anytime. Stop me anytime.
Awesome. Sure, come on up. Let's get to see some faces.
Oh, wow. I get to see someone. This is fantastic. Here, I'm gonna spotlight you.
Good morning.
Hi.
How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing good. I just had a question. Does not submitting our SAT lessen the chances of us getting into the college, or?
Not really. Well, okay. So that's the question, right? And what's your name?
Caden.
Caden. So Caden, great question. That's the question, right? The question is, I'm going to flip it around, and I'm going to flip around your question, Caden, and I'm going to say, instead of asking, does not submitting affect our chances of getting in? The way that you want to be phrasing it is, how do we know if submitting is going to help us or hurt us? That's the question. How do we know? Now, of course, the one thing that every one of my students now knows all about are the average scores that you can get from US News and World Reports or whatever these sites are. And that's what everybody is looking at. And so when mom calls me up, when dad calls me up and says, little Susie, she's got to get a 1450 because that's the score for my school that I see on the websites and in the. Really important. No matter what that score you think you need is, there is no guarantees. There is no score that's going to get you in. There is no score that will guarantee your admissions. And likewise, there's no score that's going to keep you out because plenty of places now have a no score policy, right? So it's a really great question, Caden, right? It's a really great question, Caden, which is, how do you know whether to submit or not? And I can't emphasize this enough. That is a case-by-case question. That depends on every single school individually and your background individually. Okay? So another way to answer that is to say, if your high school career has been really strongly focused on academics, then your test scores are going to play a big role. If your high school career has been really strongly focused on extracurriculars, sports, orchestra, whatever, you fill in the blank, right? Then test scores are not going to be what makes or breaks you. That's not going to be what gets you into the school that you really want to go to. Is it a nice piece to have? Of course. That's why we always want to try to get a good score. And so that's going to bring me back now to where I was, which is ACT versus SAT. Take at least one test for real by the spring of 11th grade. That's right now, ladies and gentlemen. That is right now. If you don't have a real SAT or ACT score on your record by June, you're late. You're behind. Get your butts in gear and make sure that you've got one of those scores official. Don't worry about if it's a perfect score. Don't worry about being ready to take the test. I mean, I have lots of ways to help you get ready to take the test. Don't you worry about that. But first and foremost, you got to get a test, and don't let like the perfect be the enemy of the good. Oh, and one more thing. This is crucial. Forget about the score report. One of the biggest misconceptions is that if you order a score report from the SAT, that it is going to tell you all about your score. Nothing. You'll learn nothing. Zero zip zilch from that. The only thing that matters is the question and answer service. Question and answer service. Okay? And the question and answer service is offered for the March SAT, the May SAT, and the October SAT. If it's not one of these three SATs, don't bother ordering any extra materials because they will not help you. Calculator is allowed on every math question for the ACT. Look, if math ain't your bag, the ACT might be a test for you because it's only 25% of your score. Further, and this is really crucial, biggest misconception about the ACT. The biggest misconception about the ACT is that if you don't know a lot of science, that you're going to do bad on the ACT. Oh man, I suck at science. I can't take the ACT. Ladies and gentlemen, the ACT is not a test of your knowledge of science. It is a test of your ability to quickly and accurately read and interpret charts and graphs. That's what the ACT science section is. We're going to do a little drill with that, time allowing, in a couple of minutes here. But I tell you what, why would I do that? Let's just go ahead and pull that out. Take a look at this. This is not on any kind of a sheet that I provided for you. This is a question from a real ACT. Hopefully you can see the whole page here. All right. So what we've got now is this graph, right? We got this graph. And the question says, on the basis of the information in the figure, one could generalize that atmospheric atmospheric pressure increases with what? So this is the ACT coming right at you. Okay, this is the kind of stuff that you're going to see. Now, the challenge isn't that you have to know all these facts about atmospheric pressure in order to be successful. You don't need to know anything, almost nothing. What you need to be able to do is to read and interpret charts and graphs. That's what this test is about. But as you can see, this graph is awful. This is a terrible graph. What on earth is going on here? What is going on in this graph? And that's how the ACT works. They're going to give you some ugly graph, and they're going to ask you a question about it. But you don't need to make it any harder than it is. Here's my rule. My rule is this. Draw an arrow. Draw an arrow in the direction of up. On the basis of the information in the figure, one could generalize that atmospheric pressure in each atmospheric layer increases with, all right. Draw an arrow in the direction of up means identify which direction is the direction of increasing atmospheric pressure. So we go here. Here's pressure. What is the direction of increasing atmospheric pressure on this graph? Does it increase as we go up? Does it increase as we go down? Does it increase as we go left? Or does it increase as we go right? What is the direction of increasing atmospheric pressure? Down. These numbers are getting larger as we go from the top to the bottom. Draw an arrow going in that direction. And now we simply ask ourselves, what else is happening as we go in that direction? Here's the graph itself. Here's the graph itself, right? Now, if we were to follow that graph down in the direction of increasing pressure, what's happening to the temperature? Well, you can see here's the temperature scale, negative, positive. As we go in the following direction, it's going decrease and then increase, and then the temperature is going to decrease and then increase. So he's saying, as we go in this direction, what's happening to temperature? Do we have an answer choice that says decrease and then increase and then decrease and then increase? Is that one of our options? No. So whatever's happening with pressure doesn't have a direct relationship to temperature. What else is happening? What is happening as we move in this direction? Decreasing altitude. As we move from the low pressure to the high pressure, the altitude is decreasing. That's a quick example of what very representative ACT science question would be like. That's a hard one. That's a hard question that I just shared with you. But the point is, you don't need to know any science. You just need to read the graph. Go ahead.
I have a question.
Please.
If you guys have questions, why don't you just come up and then we can have you walk up and ask the question.
Yeah. Questions.
Yep. And if you have another question, if you want to come up behind her, we can get a line.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I hate being in it. Okay.
Oh, well, he can do she doesn't want to be on camera. She doesn't want to be on the whole screen.
You don't have to be on camera. I'm on camera.
You know how like some colleges, like it's like optional for you to take the SAT and ACT?
Yes.
If you take it, can you still like submit your score to like that college, or like would it
Always.
not be required?
Yeah. So in general,
Thank you.
the only reason why you would ever submit your scores when you're testing is to save a couple of bucks. You get some free submissions when you register. But if you're like competitive in the applications admissions process, you never send out your scores. Never send out your scores unless you want to send out your scores. So do not select any automatic, I want my scores to go to University of Maryland, I want my scores to go to, don't do that. Then when you're ready to apply, you decide, okay, do I want to send my scores or not? And then you have 100% control over where you send your scores. Now, there's a one tiny caveat, which is there's still a handful of schools in the country that are going to require, they want to see every score you've ever taken of every test. But that's really just schools like Yale and Stanford. So at the upper tier, just expect they're going to see everything you've ever done. But for almost everybody else, it's going to be, if the scores help you, you will submit. And if they don't, you don't submit. It's totally up to you. What else? Hit me. Next question.
Was a question. I should tell you, normally Mr. Silverman he volunteers his time to do this for us. Normally this is what you in a prep class would pay for. So this is your free chance to really, like, counselors, we know general information, but this is what he lives and breathes. So if you
This is
have
what I live and breathe. This is
Yep.
how I pay the bills. You got it.
So he is the guy. Like we're like the third cousin to the guy. So let's get those questions out there. All right, we have one in back.
Go.
Are all the science questions, do they all have graphs? Or is it just that one?
Hell of a good question. So no, not all, most. The way that it works is there'll be 6 passages. And in each science passage, 6 or 7 passages. And in each science passage, you'll have charts and graphs, and they'll ask you questions about that. And then you go to another passage. So there'll be passages about electronics, there'll be passages about atmosphere, there'll be passages about physics, whatever. But they will always include one passage that has no charts or graphs. And that is called the competing scientist passage, because that will be a reading comprehension passage on the science section. Okay, good question. And you would treat that one like a reading comprehension passage. What are they arguing about? What's the main idea? Eliminate wrong answers. And there's a whole strategy around all that. Anything that I'm telling you about, I'm going to have strategies for you, techniques for you, tricks and tips. If you look behind me here, that's my dog, Murray, and he is featured in many of my posters. And on my posters, I have some of my, you could say, patented rules, right? So one of the things that most people know about me when they hear about me, like, oh yeah, he has all these rules, right? So I'm going to give you all these rules. And those rules are things that are easy to remember. And when you start to accumulate those rules, then you start to gain some confidence. And then when you gain some confidence, that's when you're able to focus at a high level. And that's when scores go up. Okay. So you can see what I wrote here is long is wrong. Whatever on the English section, whatever the longest answer choice is, literally, like in terms of the number of characters long, cross it off. It's always wrong. That's a rule. Next, please. Great questions.
I was just wondering if you could explain the ACT scoring system, because I know it's different than the SAT one.
Correct. SAT is at a 1600 max, and you got 2 sections. Okay. So let me scan down to the bottom right here of this page. And you can see it says the verdict. So this is kind of like the overall verdict, right? Is for the ACT, in general, most students find that the ACT is a more straightforward test. And what that means is it's not necessarily easier, but it's going to be more clear what they want from you, what they're asking for. The SAT, well, that's our default test, meaning that's the test you're going to take if nobody tells you to take the other test, because the College Board, the people who make the SAT, they've got Northern Virginia on lockdown. They have won the marketing battle for Northern Virginia. So this is real important, is that the ACT and the SAT are equally good. They are equally valid. Both tests are accepted everywhere. So how do the scores compare? This would be a perfect score on the SAT. This would be a perfect score on the ACT. This would be around the national average on the SAT. This would be around the national average on the ACT, but you can expect that those numbers are going to be higher than they used to be for the reasons we discussed, which is that if you got a low score, you're less likely to submit these days. Okay. So the SAT, right, is going to be 800 for math, 800 for verbal, and you add them all up, right? The ACT is going to be English, math, reading, science, 4 sections, and each of those sections has a maximum score of 36. So your total score is the English plus the math plus the reading plus the science divided by 4. That's going to be your composite score. You add up all the sections and divide by 4. And for both tests, for both the ACT and the SAT, you can SuperScore. And that means you can take your best test, your best score from math, take your best score from verbal out of all the different times you took the SAT, put them together to make a SuperScore. For the ACT, it's even more advantageous. You could take your best score from any of your test dates for each of your sections, and that's what's used to compute your composite. One more thing from this page, and then I got to turn the page. No, that's all I'm going to say about this. No. One more thing. Don't do the essay. There's like 4 schools left in America that require the SAT essay. And I'm not even sure they're going to offer it after this June. So don't do the essay unless you know specifically that you have to do the SAT essay, and you almost certainly do not. Do not register for the essay. No benefit. Go on, hit me.
All right, you got about 7 minutes.
Yeah. We're not almost out of time. Doing great. Okay. Now here's the other page. Some tips. For reading, you got to feel the love. And what that means is there's no way to separate how you feel emotionally from how well you comprehend cognitively. If you go into that reading section with a negative attitude, you're going to suck. Don't bother. Stay home. Don't get out of bed that day. If you can come and bring a positive attitude, you got a chance of being successful. English, eliminate long is wrong. I already told you that rule. And for verbal in general, ladies and gentlemen, eliminate wrong answers. You got to cross off wrong answers. SAT math. Here's my most important rule for the SAT math section. Yeah, on the SAT, what do we know? You've got an English section. You've got a reading section. You got a no calculator section. You've got a yes calculator section, but make no mistake about it. On the SAT, every question is a reading question, especially on the math section. They're trying to trick you. And for the ACT, I already shared a couple of important points about the ACT, but I didn't tell you the single most powerful thing that you need to know about the ACT science section. Don't read the introductory paragraphs. Do not read the intros. They are not there to help you. They're there to distract you. Go right to the multiple choice questions. It's going to say, according to figure 2, blah, blah, blah. And then you go and you look at figure 2, and that's where your answer is. It ain't in those paragraphs. Don't bother reading them. If you're going to do prep, I highly recommend that you only use official questions. I can go into the ARCO book. I can go into the Barron's book. I can go into the Princeton Review book, and I can go into the Kaplan book. I can go into any prep book, and I can point out questions that are not real questions. I would say, no, this would never be on the SAT. There's a very specific reason why this particular question would never be on the SAT. Don't study this question. There's no way any of you could ever know whether it's a real question or a fake question. I know this. That's what you pay me the big bucks for. But you're not going to know that. Only use official materials. Don't use any prep books. Don't use any prep books. If you ever want, ladies and gentlemen, if you ever want extra tests, let me know. I've got plenty. Don't order those prep books. You're wasting your money. There's a link right here where you can get official SAT tests. There's a link right there. You can get official ACT tests. No need to spend any money. And then you guys are a little late for this game, but not too late. One of the things that I offer is a way to compare SAT versus ACT in real time in one day. And that's this product that I call Assess Yourself. And it's a miniature SAT. It's a miniature ACT. You do them right back to back on a Sunday morning. 3 hours and you're done. And at the end, you'll know which is the best test for you. May 8th, that's the next time I'm offering this. So if you are still considering SAT versus ACT, this could be a good fit for you, okay? All right, I want to stop right there in terms of what I have to present and just say other questions. This has been great for questions. That's the very best thing I can offer you. What other questions do you have, ladies and gentlemen, in the whatever 2 minutes I have left?
All right, any final questions for Mr. Silverman? Oh, they gave you a thank you.
Oh, hey, anything that you want to know after this, my email, josh@edgeed, everyone there knows my email. Everyone knows how to get in touch with me. If you have any other questions you want to ask me offline, shoot me an email. I'd be glad to answer any of the questions that you got. I can answer questions all day long.
Let's give Mr. Nice.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. All right, we'll see you for the next round.
Yep, next round. They're already coming in.
Here they come. Now, usually what I do is I mix it up a little bit. So this group, you are not going to see the exact same stuff.
Can I ask you a question? If you're
Please,
looking at like if you're looking at like 9th grade to, obviously the spring of 11th grade, where do you generally, like, if you have nieces and nephews, when do you recommend they do the prep class?
Yeah, that's another good question. I have another handout that's like my timeline.
Mm-hmm.
And it really depends on how aggressive you are.
Right.
That makes a difference, right? So for the really aggressive students, May of sophomore year.
Okay.
Okay. So that's the thing that I just promoted at the end. It's called Assess Yourself of the last session. That's almost specifically designed for sophomores who want to get an early start.
Okay.
Because it's like it's if you're real early in the process, then you have the luxury of time, and that's when it makes the most sense to really zero in first and say, okay, SAT, ACT, which one do we like more?
Sure.
Try it out, take a look, and then you can begin that process in the summer between the sophomore and the junior year. In general, we don't like to do a lot of prep in the spring if we don't have to, because so many students are doing APs now. But you know, the summer it really is a student by student thing. The earliest that I recommend is spring of the sophomore year.
Okay.
And individual concerns like sports and athletics can totally have a difference. So like sometimes coaches, if you're being recruited, they want to see a score well before you would ever actually have to have a score.
Got it. Okay.
All right.
That's
That was
great.
a long-winded
Great to know.
answer.
Thank
Sorry.
you. No, it was a great question. All right, I think we're ready to get started. So I'm
Hello.
going to introduce, if we can turn off our voices and give our attention to Mr. Silverman. He is going to share a lot about what he knows related to ACT and SAT. So we're going to turn the show over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Welcome. Thanks for having me, Marshall. It's always good to be back virtually, in person, or any other way. This is, I don't know, maybe the fourth time that I've done Junior Focus Day with this group, and always have a great time. Always a pleasure. So hopefully you've got some handouts. That's really what's going to guide it here. I do SAT prep. My name's Josh Silverman, SAT and ACT prep, among other things. The materials that I presented for you today are going to be a combination of things. First up is this page that says ACT versus SAT. This is just a fact sheet. And I wanted to give you a little bit of a side-by-side comparison here. So you got your different testing dates for each test. You could take them as many or as few times as you choose. There's no limit to how many times you test. And the one thing that you want to understand is this: test optional is not the same as test blind. Those are two different things. So definitely so far, the most important question that I've been asked, the most pressing question that I've been asked is, how do you know whether you should submit your scores or not? You took the SAT, you took the ACT, you got a score. Now, do I want to submit my school? My top choices are test optional. Should I submit my score or not? That is the question. And it is not an easy question. It's a case-by-case question. You're going to huddle with your counselor. You're going to look at the different schools, and you're going to decide on a case-by-case basis. Does it make sense to me to send a score here? Scores are going up among my students. And what I mean by that is for the high achievers in this region that want to get into competitive schools, scores are going up. And a lot of people are no longer submitting scores if they're not at a certain threshold. And that threshold, you know, whether to submit or not, is going to vary on school by school basis and on a student by student basis. But the good news is there's never been a better time to apply to college without a test score. Of course, it is to your advantage in almost every case to apply to college with a good test score. If you got a good test score, that's helpful. So let's talk about those tests. On the ACT, you can use a calculator for the entire math section. On the SAT, the test is very familiar. But for both of them, you do not need the optional essay. I do not sign up for the essay. For both of them, almost without fail, the most coachable section is the English section. And when I say that, what I mean is I've got more tricks for the English section than any other section of the test. So if you wanted, bang for your buck, you're going to get the most score increase from English than you're going to get from any other section. For most students, everybody's different, but for most students. And gang, take the test multiple times. You can SuperScore. SuperScore means you put your best scores from each section together. Out of all of the different times you took the test, you can pick your best scores. Now, on the con side, for the ACT, there's going to be math on that test that is not on the SAT. There's going to be logarithms. There's going to be conic sections that you wouldn't normally see on the SAT, stuff like that. Okay. But even though the ACT will have some higher level material, in general, the math is easier because it's more straightforward. The verbal is much harder on the SAT than it is on the ACT, much harder. There's no doubt about it. The reading, especially. Now, I do this for a living, okay? And if I do a ACT reading section, if I miss more than one question out of 40, I am absolutely furious with myself. You're allowed to miss one, okay? Sometimes you miss one. Everybody misses one. That's okay. Everyone's allowed to miss one. But on the SAT, I almost never get them all right. ACT, I usually get every reading question right, and it's not even hard. SAT, I try my darndest. And I can almost never get them all right. I always miss questions. And sometimes I'll miss 3 or 4. I do this for a living. The SAT reading section is hard. Got to know that. And the one thing to keep in mind is this. This is universal, okay? Expectations are way too high. Expectations are way too high. Your own expectations as students, your parents' expectations, everyone's expectations. Society's expectations, way too high, way too high. So what you have to understand is that if you start the preparation process with an 1100 on the SAT, on your PSAT, if you start with an 1100 on the PSAT and you're able to increase your score to a 1280, 1100 to a 1280, okay? In reality, that is awesome. That's a 180-point increase. Dude, that's incredible. But in the twisted world we live in, many students consider that a failure. Oh, I didn't even get 1300, right? That's what I mean by unrealistic expectations. There is no certificate that you were born with that says you deserve a 1500 on the SAT. You're not born with that. Some people get it, some people don't. But expectations are through the roof and they're unreasonably high. So you have to be kind to yourself. A good score increase is a good score increase. At the end of the day, is that going to be a score that you submit? It will probably depend upon the schools that you're applying to. If you got a 1280, you're probably going to submit. That's a pretty darn good score. There's not a lot of schools you wouldn't submit that score to. And then the last thing I want to point out here is that both tests are accepted everywhere. There is no school that says we only do the SAT. There is no school that says we only do the ACT. You could use both tests everywhere. Okay, at this point, I'm going to pause and open the floor to questions. What can we go over? Talk to me, gang. Can you still hear me? Are we still alive?
You're good.
Okay.
So we have a question in the back. What is it?
Hit me.
Oh, good. Give me a thumbs up. So as I said to the previous, oh, great question.
Test prep for both, like how long should you study for the math and English section on the SAT and the science and math for the ACT?
So recommendations for how much time to prepare for. What should a student
Totally.
Okay.
Totally. All right. Well, let's switch gears here. So talk about test taking, right? And tips. Okay. And when it comes to preparation, so the very, very specific question was how much? How much preparation? Well, that's, I'm unfortunately not going to be able to give you a very simple and clear answer for that. The answer is it depends. Okay. I can tell you that my programs are 30 hours. So my flagship program, my main program, SAT Live, ACT Live, those would be the courses that if you came to me and said, Josh, I want to do SAT prep. What do I want to, what should I do? I would say, get into this program. Those I charge around $520, $560, and they're 30 hours. That is a lot. If you're doing 30 hours of prep, that's more than enough. You do not need to do 30 hours of prep. Okay. For many students, 10 hours would be fine. And how it breaks down from math to verbal, that's, you know, that's very much a case-by-case basis. But in the past, I've done a crash course, and I'll probably offer something like that again in the future. And that was 10 hours. So my answer is between 10 and 30 hours. Okay, that's how much.
All right, we have a question right here, and then we'll get you. Oh, so do schools allow students to take SATs in the summer?
Absolutely.
No, but is it paid for, covered by the school?
No. I can talk quickly about
Please.
if you qualify for free and reduced lunch, there are fee waivers and you can get those from your counselor. Otherwise, I don't know what the running rate is now for SAT and ACT. Do you know how much it costs, Josh, to take the test?
About 60 bucks.
Okay, so 60 bucks a session.
It's about 60
right.
bucks. But yeah, if money is an issue, they will absolutely bend over backwards to make sure you either don't have to pay or don't pay much. There's a lot of ways that you can get the SAT for cheap. Okay. They do not want that. They are really serious about not letting that be a reason why people don't take the test.
And a lot of, I would say people want to take it 2 to 3 times, depending on.
2 to
and
3
so-
times. Bingo. 2 to 3. That's it.
Okay.
Two to
What?
three, like actual tests or PSAT?
No actual tests.
Oh, he's asking, so a young gentleman,
Actual test. That's not including the PSAT.
so the actual SAT or ACT, depending on what you've targeted, taking it 2 to 3 times.
Gotta
I mean,
take it at least twice. You gotta expect to take each test at least twice. You must expect that. You have to expect that. Okay? That's really important.
And then another gentleman in the back asked, how much do your courses cost directly from you?
Yeah. The most expensive course is $560. The least expensive is $160. And then of course I also do 101, but that's really expensive. You don't want that. You want my courses because they are a tremendous value. They're a tremendous value. The amount of content that you get, and it's exclusive. The tricks that I offer, nobody else has this stuff. Nobody else has this stuff. And I know because I go to the bookstore and I look through the books and I see, do you have any tricks for me to steal? And they don't. But if they do, I steal them. And that's how it works.
Question about the quality of Khan Academy.
Pretty awful. Not because Sal Khan's a bad teacher, not because anything they say is untrue, just because their job, and by they, I mean the partnership between Khan Academy and the College Board. That's how you have to view this, right? It's a partnership between Khan Academy and the College Board. The way it works is this. Khan Academy gives the College Board cover. They give them cover, meaning, well, everyone can be successful on the SAT because if you ever want to know how to do the problems, you can go right to Khan Academy and he's going to show you exactly how to do them. So it's fair game. Okay. That's the idea. The problem is he will always show you the longest, most complicated possible way of doing a problem. Now, let me give you an example of why that doesn't work. So right here, can everybody see this?
Yep.
This is a question from a real SAT. 9a to the fourth plus 12a squared b squared plus 4b to the fourth. Which of the following expressions is equivalent to the expression shown above? All right, now look, here's the deal. I, Josh Silverman, am a professional teacher and tutor. I know, taking one look at this, I know that we're dealing with a quartic trinomial of two variables that happens to be a perfect square trinomial. But, ladies and gentlemen, no normal human being knows that. No normal human being knows that. That's ridiculous. You're not supposed to know that. Here's what you do. You say, all right, well, which of the following is equivalent to the expression above? I don't know. I don't know which one is equivalent, but here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to say A. I'm going to say A is 1. Let's just plug in 1. Sub in 1 for A. I'm going to say B. I'm going to say B is 1. They don't tell me that they can't be 1. What is 9 times 1 to the 4th? Well, 1 to the 4th is 1. And 9 times 1 is?
9.
Feel free to chime in, ladies and gentlemen. What is 12 times 1 squared times 1 squared? 12. What is 4 times 1 to the 4th?
4.
What is 9 plus 12 plus 4?
25.
Put that number inside of a swirling circle with an answer pointed toward the answer choices, with an arrow pointed toward the answer choices. What is 3 times 1 squared?
3.
What is 2 times 1 squared?
2.
What is 3 plus 2?
5.
What is 5 squared?
25.
25.
That's the SAT. You think you're going to see that shit at Khan Academy? No way.
Yeah.
No way.
I'm gonna go to Khan Academy and tell me your tricks.
Not only, feel free, let him know. Just make sure you spell my name right. Not only are you not going to see that, he cannot show you that. You understand that? He can't show you that. He has to show you the official way to do it. Even if he wanted to, he couldn't share that trick because that's not how you're supposed to do it. And the game is all about, we are pretending that the way you're supposed to do it, the way that you learned in school, we're pretending that that's what's most effective. It is not. And that's why if you want to get a high score, you need me or somebody like me to show you the stuff that works versus the stuff that doesn't. So sorry, not sorry. Khan Academy sucks for SAT prep.
Got another question.
Please.
Pardon? So, okay, so maybe your question is, so Josh, say a student comes and pays $560, they come, they do your class, they came in with an 1100, they go take the SAT, they get an 1100.
What? What were you doing? Were you asleep in my class? There's no way that happens. But sometimes things happen. There's no factor more important to success on test day than how you feel on test day. That is it. By far, that is the single most important factor. Everything else is secondary. So if you had a bad day, that can explain a lot, right? If you are goalie of the soccer team, for example, and the night before the SAT, you're playing your school rivals and it goes down to a shootout and you let the winning goal go by you, you're the GOAT. You're the one everyone is blaming for that loss. No one wants to sit next to you on the bus on the way home. Don't even bother. If the SAT is the next day, don't even bother. Stay in bed. You're not going to do well. Now, same scenario. End of the game. Big rivals. You make this incredible diving save and you block the shot and you save the game and they're carrying you around on their shoulders. You're going to crush it on the SAT tomorrow. You get that? So sometimes there's things that are outside of our control that are going to affect your performance. But I think what you're really getting at is this. If I pay money and my score doesn't go up, what are you going to do about it, Josh? And my answer is this. You're not going to get your money back. I'll tell you that right now. But I'm not going to turn you loose, right? So that exact situation happened on the March test. One of my students went through the program, was there for all the sessions. Score went from, it's actually funny, it went from an 1100 to an 1120. That was the score increase. And I said, that's not good. You know, we're not happy with that. So what I do, and I do not make any guarantees, so this is not in writing, but I will almost always say what I said to this student. Dude, you can come back and take any of my SAT courses again. You could take any of my ACT courses again at no extra charge. If you come through my class and you do your work and your score doesn't go up, I'm going to work with you to get that score up. Okay? And I'm not going to charge you any more money for it. That's my answer.
Question right here?
Two things to say. So regarding Khan Academy, like I've met like multiple people who had like really good scores because of Khan Academy. And also like in social media, like people who took the SAT and ACT and they used Khan Academy, they got really good scores. So like how is it like that? It's like people like actually good on the SAT and ACT.
So she's saying that there are people that say Khan Academy has helped them. So I think she's sort of responding to, she's heard good things about the prep that Khan Academy has done.
Hey, I mean, all I can tell you is what I know. Like, there's a lot of people out there that swear by McDonald's and that it's the best restaurant in town. I don't, you know what I mean? And so, like, tastes are going to vary. I stand by 100% what I said, which is that by its very nature, the lessons on Khan Academy cannot be the most effective type of lessons because they cannot tell you any tricks. They can only give you the most superficial level. And there are some cases where that's fine. For example, solving a quadratic equation using the quadratic formula. There will be one question like that on most SATs. Maybe every other SAT. Maybe every other SAT, there'll be one question where your job is to solve a quadratic equation by using the quadratic formula, okay? There are no tricks. What SolCon shows you on that problem is the way to do it. Okay. So sometimes there's no tricks, and exactly what he's showing you is exactly the way to do it. Okay, fine. The problem is this. Sometimes there are tricks, but he's not going to show you those. How will you know which ones have the tricks and which ones don't? How will you know where you can save some time and where you can't? And most importantly, how are you going to get that incredible feeling of confidence that you got when you saw 25 right here? I heard the shouts in the room. You can't hide that. That's what this test is about. Nobody gets this. This is psychology, man. This is psychology. Your score on that test revolves around how you feel on test day. Everything I teach is just a vehicle for increasing your confidence. There is no program that is going to increase your score 250 points. That doesn't happen. It doesn't exist. But I regularly see 250 point increases on the SAT. How on earth is that possible? Well, here's how. Because you're not the same person that you were when you started. After the program, you're no longer the same person, meaning you do not experience the taking of the test in the same way. That's how breakthroughs occur. They're not going to be because you crammed. Go on.
Lily.
So I know a lot of people have been like prepping for the SAT since like 10th grade. Is it ever too late? Like at this point in our junior year, like start studying now and still get a good score?
If you're a junior, is it too late to start prepping? I think there's
No.
right.
No, it's not too late, but you got to start now. You got to start now. Now is exactly the time if you haven't started already. Let me share that with you. Okay, hold on. So look at this, right? This is our calendar here. Okay. You see those three? The June ACT, the May SAT, or the June SAT. If you haven't taken an official test, I highly recommend that you get into one of those tests. Okay? If you haven't already had an official test, a real ACT or a real SAT, then you definitely want one of those. All right? Get a real score on your record immediately. And then you will almost definitely be taking one of these. Okay? Either the ACT in July, this coming July, or the SAT at August of your senior year, or the ACT August of your senior year, or September, excuse me, of your senior year. So that would give you 2 tests. Everything would be done before the early action and early decision deadlines. And you're in good shape. That's fine. That's enough.
Okay. Next question.
So basically, does it taking the test? So you said you recommend taking it 2 to 3 times. Does the colleges, does that affect if you take it like 6, 7 times?
They don't care. They don't care. They don't care. Let me tell you this. Once upon a time, I was at this very day, Junior Focus Day, and there was a representative from the University of Michigan, I believe, and a question was asked of that representative. How many times should you take the SAT? This was someone from the admissions office at Michigan. You know what their answer was? As many times as your parents will pay for it. That's it. You take the SAT as many times as you want. Nobody cares. They're not looking to penalize you if you got a low score. They're looking for your best scores. 6 or 7 times is too many. But theoretically, yes, you could take it that many times and it wouldn't make any difference.
2 to 3 times seems to be. If
2 to
2
3
times.
times. There'd have to be a pretty compelling reason to take it more than 3 times.
Right, like you got sick while you were taking it the 3rd time. Like you really want to if you have 3 good tests, that's probably what your score is.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, like I said, there'd have to be some sort of external circumstances. You know, it would be like there's a target score that you're really trying to get. Let me tell you exactly what it would be. Let me tell you exactly what it would be. You've got a coach that's recruiting you for fill in the blank, lacrosse, swimming, whatever. And they need you to get over a certain score, 1200, for example. And you've taken the test 3 or 4 times and you've got an 1190 and you're like, dude, if I could just get 10 more points, then I'm in. Then coaches, then I'm in. That's why you would take it more. That would be a compelling reason.
One more, I think we have time for one more.
I have a very important question. I was wondering, do you recommend that we read the entire passage or the reading section of that and actually skim through it when you talk to, because otherwise there's a random big location in the time. That's not something that you
I couldn't hear anything.
Yeah, he's asking questions about, so when you approach the reading section for the SAT, should you read the entire passage or should you skim? Do you have tips for the reading section?
Absolutely. Great question. Great question. My strategy is you read the entire passage. My strategy is you read the entire passage. Hold on one second. Hold on. So when you come through my course, one of the things that you get is my study guides. I have my own exclusive study guide. So this is the reading strategy for the SAT, right? And you can see step 1 is that love. Whatever that passage is about, you love it. You have to love it because reading is a transactional process. You get out of it what you put into it. And as you're reading with the love, you are asking yourself exactly 2 questions, no more, no less. What's the main idea? How does the author feel about it? You're going to read the passage. You're going to write the answers to those questions. What's the main idea? The main idea is birds fly in a V to save energy. How does the author feel about it? Pro. Yeah, we like that we learned something about birds today. You read the passage, you write the main idea, you write how does the author feel, and you do all of that in 3 minutes or less. That's what I train you to do. Then you start earning your points. Because remember, you don't get any points for reading the passage. You only get points for answering the multiple choice questions, okay? And here, the key is don't be a sucker, dude. Eliminate, get rid of wrong answers. You gotta cross off wrong answers. There's nowhere that it is more important than on the reading section of the test. And there's several flavors of wrong answer that show up over and over again. It's the opposite of the correct answer. Get rid of it. Half of the answer is right, but half of it's wrong. Well, you can't be half right and half wrong. If it's half right, it's all wrong, etc. And then finally, there's the money. The money is the evidence. It is the specific word, phrase, or idea that comes from the passage that we find in the answer choice. This is my technique. And yes, it involves reading the passage first. There are strategies where you don't read the passage first. I've never had any success with those, and I don't coach those. That's my answer. Outstanding questions, ladies and gentlemen. Outstanding questions for me today. Anything else?
Anything else before we wrap up?
Oh, where can you find him?
Oh, his contact information is here. Can I just share one thing I really like that you shared?
Please.
One of the things he shared in the previous group, because not everyone is going to be able to afford a class. When you're doing your prep, use the questions that SAT releases and ACT releases. Mr. Humphreys has a bunch of released answers or questions with their answers. So like the guides that he said, like Princeton guides and things like that are not nearly as helpful, are just released questions from the SAT and the ACT. So you know what you'll actually be seeing versus like what Princeton might come up with that you might see. So
Yeah,
Did I
and
say that right?
oh, absolutely. And just to piggyback on that, you know, I've never turned someone away because they can't afford my groups. Never. If you see me today and you see what I'm offering and you say, Josh, I'd love to work with you, but I can't afford it, send me an email. We'll work something out. Okay. I'm not gonna I'm not gonna kick you out because of that. All right. If you want to work and you want this stuff, let me know. We'll make
Thanks
it happen.
so much.
Got
They
it.
are on to their next one. Thanks
All
so
right.
much.
Bye, everybody.
Josh, I think we should get going if you're okay.
I am absolutely ready. Let's rock and roll.
All right. So Josh Silverman has volunteered for many, many years to our benefit for our Junior Focus Day. He is an expert on SAT, ACT prep, and he is going to share with you a little bit of his vast knowledge. So if we can just give our time and attention to him. Josh, take it away.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Always enjoy Junior Focus Day. Great students at Marshall, and you guys ask great questions. I've already gotten some great questions today. Feel free to jump in with questions at any time. That's how I always operate. So I'm Josh Silverman. I do test preparation. Right now, everything I do is virtual. So my courses are all virtual. My one-on-one tutoring is all virtual. Everything is online, like we're seeing today. And what I wanted to share with you today was, first of all, a little bit of an overview regarding the two tests, right? And one of the things that has come up already in a couple of other groups is the timeline. This is my advice. Take at least one test for real by spring of the 11th grade. Take at least one test for real by this spring. So what does that mean? That means either the June ACT, the May SAT, or the June SAT. If you haven't taken a test for real, PSAT doesn't count. Practice tests at home don't count. If you haven't taken a test for real, I want you to register for one of these. Now, in addition to this timeline of you want to take one test, you're going to take it more than once. Taking the test multiple times is very effective. And the reason why, one reason why, is because you can SuperScore. SuperScore means this. It means you can take the best score from each section. On the SAT, you could take your best math, you could take your best verbal. Out of all the different times that you take the SAT, you could take your best math, you could take your best verbal, you put those together, that's your SuperScore. That's what you'll submit to schools. For the ACT, you can take your best of all four categories: English, math, reading, and science. Submit those together, that's your SuperScore. So obviously, if you take the test multiple times, you got more chances to increase each of those sections. Very important to understand that. And then the last kind of big bullet point is this. Both tests accepted everywhere. There is no preference. Schools don't have a preference. Schools don't have a preference for SAT versus ACT. They don't care. You can always convert scores, and so either test is perfectly valid for your applications. What I wanted to do with this group, with this last section, is I wanted to share with you some of my tips and tricks. A question that came up in the last section was, What about Khan Academy? How good is that? And in that last section, I really gave it a thumbs down. I gave Khan Academy's test prep a thumbs down. And the main reason why isn't because the things that they're saying are untrue. It's more like because they're not giving you, Sal Khan, is not giving you the tips and the tricks that can actually help you to be more confident and more successful on the test. And it always comes down to that factor of confidence. How do you feel? If you feel strong, if you feel confident, you're going to have a good day testing. If you don't, you're going to have a bad day. Careless errors. Yeah, they don't exist. Have you ever made a careless error? No, you haven't. You know what you've made? A distraction error. It's not like you don't care. When we get distracted, that's when errors take place. That's when students say, oh, I made a careless error. I got to focus. I got to concentrate better. But it doesn't work that way. Very, very few human beings are able to concentrate on demand. Very few. How do you concentrate? Well, you feel confident. Confidence means a lack of doubt. Confidence means an absence of disbelief. So the best prep is prep that's going to build your confidence so that when you get into that test, you're able to actually bring to bear all of your knowledge, all of your abilities. There is no prep that's going to take you from I know nothing to I know everything. That's not how this works. You already know almost everything you need to know. It's about how to bring that out, how to access your abilities on test day when the pressure is up. Okay, so how do you do that? How do you get there? Well, one thing that's really, really helpful is if you've got some tricks. Because if you know some things that nobody else knows, well, then you start feeling confident. Now, this is not one of the things I provided for you, but this is one of the things that every one of my students receives when they come through my courses. I have an exclusive set of study guides. And these study guides have information, tips and tricks that are not available anywhere else. Totally exclusive. Let me share one or two of those with you right now. Now, as you can see, I've got this test. This is for the English section of the SAT, broken down by topics. One of those topics is commas. Okay. So right here, that is the entirety of my notes on commas. It's really important to make sure that the things that you have to remember, the things that you have to memorize, you want that to be as small a number of things as possible. And for me, my experience has shown that students do best when you give them bullet points. Bullet points, man! So once upon a time, many years ago, I was working with students and I was telling them about commas and about the rule for commas. And what I noticed is that when people work with commas, the mistake that they tend to make most often is they put in commas that don't belong, okay? If you're gonna make a mistake with commas, almost every time, the mistake is gonna be that you put in a comma that doesn't belong. So, for years, I would tell my students the following. When it comes to commas, you are far more likely to put in a comma that doesn't belong then you are to leave out one that does belong. That's what I would say. And I thought, man, there's no way you could explain commas any better than what I just said. And then one day I'm working with the student and I say that to her exactly the way I just said it. And she goes, oh, my teacher just says, when in doubt, leave it out. And in that moment, boom, I realized I will never teach commas again the same way. And that's been my rule ever since. When in doubt, leave it out. If you are not sure of whether to put a comma or to not put a comma, don't put a comma. That's the rule. That's my rule for commas. And as you can see, that is, oops, hold on. And as you can see, that is right here on this page. When it comes to commas, when in doubt, leave it out. Now, it's simple. It's memorable because it rhymes. And it's incredibly powerful. It's just an incredibly powerful tool. It's an incredibly powerful rule. Because now, as a student, you've got something easy to remember that can apply in many situations, that when you are experiencing anxiety, you can rely on that rule. Oh, this was kind of tough, but Josh says when in doubt, leave it out. So you know what? We're just going to leave it out. Boom. That's how this test works. Okay. That's how this test works. Now, in addition to something like that, I've also got some other things that are really, really secret. I'm going to share one of them with you right now, but this is one where, ladies and gentlemen, what I'm going to share with you everything else that I say today is fair game. And you can go and tell your friends, and you can go and tell your family, you can go and tell your cousins, okay? But the thing that I'm about to show you, this is the one thing you're not allowed to tell anybody else. You're not allowed to tell anybody else this. This is a secret. If you want to combine independent clauses, an independent clause is something that stands alone as a sentence, right? Something that could be a sentence. Something that could be a sentence. Something that you could put a period at the end of. That's an independent clause. Now, in reality, there are exactly three ways to combine two independent clauses. You could use a comma with a conjunction. I went to the gym. Sophie stayed home. I went to the gym, comma, but Sophie stayed home. You could use a comma with a conjunction. That's one way. Another way to combine two independent clauses is you could use a semicolon. That's a second way. And of course, the third way is you could use a period, make them into two sentences, full stop. Yeah, except guess what? Semicolon is always wrong. Yeah. Semicolon on the SAT is always wrong. I'm being 100% serious and I'm being 100% literal. What I'm telling you is this: when you are doing the English section of the SAT, every time that you see a semicolon in one of the answer choices, eliminate, cross off that answer. It is wrong. Now, how do I know this? How do I know this? First of all, is that even true? Yes. Second of all, how do I know this? So it's important to understand that when it comes to the SAT specifically, not so much the ACT, but definitely the SAT, it's important to understand that the way that they create the test is it is designed specifically to make you get things wrong. Okay? That's how they design the SAT. It is designed to make you get things wrong. And when I say you, I mean the royal you. I mean everyone who's taking these tests. Because the function of the SAT is to spread the data. The purpose for the SAT in the game of higher education is to have some students with high scores, some students with medium scores, and some students with low scores for the purpose of admission, right? And so that's why they have to be able to make you get things wrong. Because if they didn't make you get things wrong, everyone would have a perfect score. And then how does that help us? That doesn't help us with admissions. So the SAT is specifically designed to make you get things wrong. Now, one of the ways that they make you get things wrong is they know your weaknesses. They've been studying on you for a century. Completely literal. They've been studying you for a century. The people who make the SAT have been studying students for over a century. And in that time, they've learned certain things about you. And one of the things that they know is that you love commas. That's one of the things they know. You love commas. You love to put in commas. So what do? They give you opportunities to put in commas that don't belong. But because you love commas so much, you're going to fall for it. You're going to fall into that trap. You're going to put in a comma that doesn't belong. Why? Because you love commas. And you mistakenly believe that more commas is good. But that's the exact opposite of the truth. In fact, the number one rule with commas is, when in doubt, leave it out. What I do is, I analyze the SAT. That means I go through each and every question. I look at each and every answer choice, and I break it down and I look for patterns. I look for outliers. I look for all the different things that you do when you do an analysis. And sometimes I will identify certain patterns. One of them that I identified is this thing about the commas. They consistently ask you if you want to use a comma, and your job is to say no. Another one of the things that I've identified is that they love to give you a lot of words when a little bit of words would have been just fine. And I developed the rule. The rule is simply this. Long is wrong. Yeah, it's real simple. Whatever the longest answer choice is, that's the wrongest answer choice. Eliminate it, cross it off, get rid of it. And so part of my job is to play defense, meaning the SAT is designed to attack you where you are weakest. And that's how they make you get things wrong. Part of my job is to prepare you for those attacks so that you don't fall for them. If, for example, one of the ways they attack you is to offer you commas when you shouldn't have a comma, then our way of combating that is to simply say, when in doubt, leave it out. If they're going to offer you long answer choices when the right answer is a short one, then our way to combat it is to say, long is wrong. But it's not enough to simply have defensive measures. Because, yeah, it's true, you have weaknesses. But so does the SAT. It has weaknesses as well. Weaknesses that can be exploited. And just like the SAT has been studying you and looking for your weaknesses, I've been studying the SAT and looking for its weaknesses. And my father, Al Silverman, who's been doing this work since 1990, the OG, if you will. And between the two of us, we've discovered a lot of weaknesses in the SAT and given you ways to attack them. And that's what this is right here. I discovered through analysis that semicolon is always wrong on the SAT, always. So what do? I tell my students, every time that you see a semicolon as an answer choice, eliminate it. Understand that you are now able to instantly eliminate between 8 and 15 answer choices on every single test. Every single test now. They love semicolon, and it's always wrong. That's what this stuff is all about. It's about building up a critical mass of these types of tips and tricks so that you're able to attack that test with confidence. And then your true genius comes out. Your real ability comes out. Everything that I offer you is simply a vehicle for you to experience the level of confidence that's necessary to give it your best. If you can give it your best on these tests, you're going to do great. I'm here to help you get out of your own way. My job isn't to give you all of the things that you're missing in order to be successful. You've got them. My job is to teach you how to let go of whatever it is that's holding you back. And everything that I offer, everything that I teach revolves around that. It's all psychology here. It's all psychology here. All right, so that's what I wanted to share with you in this opening section here, was a little bit of the background, a little bit of how all this works. You got some tips, you got some tricks, and when you put them together, you're able to experience success. Questions, comments, concerns? What can I answer for you?
Just getting started in this SAT process, ACT process. I took the PSAT my sophomore year. I'm junior year now. I'm taking a practice SAT this weekend, but I see that on the sheet that was given to us, there's like a test for determining whether we should take the SAT or ACT. I was just wondering, like, if we have weaknesses in some core areas like math and science per se, should that, and like, whether our school gives which specific test, should that like factor into our decision?
So basically, how do you know whether you should take the SAT or the ACT?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or
What was the last thing about if your school gives something, how should that factor into your decision?
Right. So like I think have offered the SAT. Fairfax is now offering the SAT to juniors during the pandemic. So I think we let them take it in the fall. Is that right, guys? Or seniors? Seniors got to take the SAT in the fall.
And there's the in-school test dates are becoming very common. So more and more, that's something that we're seeing. Yes, absolutely. And when it comes to an in-school test date, of course, you're going to take it. It's free. You're there. Take it. And because it's within the context of the school day, some students experience, more comfort because it's not like you're getting up on a Saturday and doing things that are different. Okay, but to specifically answer your question, yes, you can see on this page that I have that says test taking tips. Down here, I am offering a product, and this product is called Assess Yourself. Assess yourself before you test yourself. You got to check yourself before you wreck yourself too. So Assess Yourself is a miniature ACT and a miniature SAT that you take side by side and then compare your score. And the main purpose of it is to give you the experience of taking both these tests side by side. That's what I recommend for anyone who is still deciding between the SAT and the ACT. Now, what I am offering here is not the only way to do this, but it is a convenient way to do exactly what I just said, which is to do the SAT, the ACT, a little mini version of each, do them right next to each other, and then immediately get feedback on both. Now, of course, this is my job. I do this for a living. If you sign up for this, I get paid. So, take it with a grain of salt. But yeah, that's what I would recommend.
So actually try both of them and see what score you get.
Yeah,
Next question.
that's it. That's the answer. Try both and see what you get. Here's a really quick way to do that. That's what I'm saying. Thank you.
Saw some other hands. In the back, nice and loud.
Let's say I don't want to like go to the program, what if I just want to study for football?
So people want to self-study. What are your recommendations for self-study?
Well, look, here it is, right? I got some links right here. You want official SAT test? Boom. You want official ACT test? Boom. That's what you do. You study those tests. You practice those tests. You practice those tests. Now, I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. You're at a disadvantage. If you don't have coaching, you're at a disadvantage. It's not, I didn't make this up. Don't shoot the messenger. But whether you're getting it from me or you're getting it from somebody else, if you've got the goods, you are in a much stronger position than if you don't. Okay? Now, the good news is there's never been a better time to submit applications without test scores. If you don't want to take the test, you don't need to. There's almost no schools left where you actually have to have a score. But many students will find it advantageous to submit a score. And for students of that ilk, yeah, you want to know, is the SAT, is the ACT better for you? Which one's a better fit for you? And if you have the coaching, if you have the preparation, it's going to make a big difference in confidence, if nothing else. Okay. But if you're not going to do that, if you absolutely just want to be on your own, you can do these right here. There's a lot out there on YouTube, etc. Be careful with those. I have been, that's something that I do more now than I used to, which is I go through the internet and I try to look for good stuff. There's not a lot. There's not a lot. I haven't found a lot of sites where I click on it and I'm like, wow, this person's really good. So just be careful. Use official materials. That's the best advice I've got.
One of the things you shared in the first presentation that I thought was helpful is that the only thing that you should get from the, not the item answer one, you were talking that they have that score.
Great. Okay. So this is super important. If you look at this sheet that I have, okay, each of these right here with the asterisks, these are the testing dates when you can actually get good, feedback. Okay. For the ACT, those dates. For the SAT, those dates. Those are the only times that you ever order a copy of your test. Do not bother ordering the score report for any other testing dates. It will not be it's worthless. Totally worthless. Okay. If you are talking about these particular dates, then that's when you can order the actual copy of your test. See the real test, see the real correct answers, and see all of your answers. So for these dates, very valuable. Everything else, there's no value whatsoever. Great stuff.
Are there any other questions right now? Oh, okay, right here.
So to clarify, it says we don't order the score for any testing date or just the stars?
So is the score report for this asterisk days, is that what it's called when you get your answers back?
No.
And so, no, what's it called?
All right, here we go. Are you ready? For the SAT, it is called the question and answer service. The question and answer service. That is all that you would order. Do not order the score report. And then for the ACT, it's called the TIR, which stands for Test Information Release. And what these are, or what this is about, is that this used to not exist. And then College Board got sued. And so them offering the actual copies of the test is something that they have to do by law. Okay? But they only offer it as little as possible because they don't want to show you their tricks. Okay? The people who make the SAT and the ACT, they don't want you to have more test questions because then they're showing their hand. Then they're showing you their tricks. So they're very resistant about ever letting you get inside and see what's going on. That's why you're limited to these particular test dates for seeing the actual test. Now, the good news is this. The good news is almost always those tests will be available online. Even if they're not officially available, you can still find them. But what you won't get is your answers. That's the thing that's only available through the testing companies. Great question, great point. We're almost out of time, gang. You got 1 minute. What else?
One more question, and we'll let it be you if there's no one. Did I miss anyone? Okay, here we go.
So you said that we could pick whether or not we want schools to see our SAT or ACT. Would it be better for them to see both, like on an admission form?
Okay.
Good
Did you
question.
hear?
Yeah, good question. Good question. So probably no. Probably no. Okay. But for a really, really ambitious student, if you're applying to a very, very selective school, if you're able to submit a 1450 SAT score and a 33 ACT score, sure, that's better than just one of them. Okay. But that's probably not going to apply to all that many people. What I would suggest is you're much better off identifying which test is your strong suit and going for that test.
All right, everyone. Let's give a big thank you to Josh Silverman for
Thank
presenting.
you, everyone. Thanks, everybody. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.